G'day folks. Well, what I'm doing today is just a fairly quick video. This is just to show a bit of a size comparison from the Lee Metford right through the service life, the basic service life of the Enfield rifles. So the first one at the top, of course, as featured in the video yesterday, was the rifle built in 1889 as a magazine rifle Mark I, converted in 1892 to use cordite from having previously used black powder, redesignated Lee Metford Mark I Star. So that was the first of the English bolt-action magazine rifles, and the first to use the new 303 round, although it was built to use black powder, later cordite, and nitrocellulose. The second rifle is a Lithgow 1915 made Australian Lithgow No. 1 MkIII Star. The third rifle is a 1953 made Fazakali No. 4 Mark II, so showing the end of the series. And the fourth one is the No. 5 Mark I, built in 1945 at the Fazakali factory, sometimes known, usually known in common language as a jungle carbine. So what we have here, as you can see really well, the differences in size. You can see that when they went to the cordite powder, cordite from after using black powder, they had to re-barrel and then come up with a new barrel, so they had the Enfield rifling, and so the long tom which comes between the Lee Metford, the first rifle, and the short magazine Lee Enfield is pretty much the same as a Lee Metford, with a 10 round magazine and the Enfield barrel. And then of course the No. 1 is fairly representative because there were different types and subtypes. There was a short magazine Lee Enfield Mark I, which came before the No. 3, which is the common one that we know. I don't have one of those as yet. Of course the No. 4 is representative of all of the No. 4s. This is one of the final post-war production ones, so it's a lot cleaner, it's a better finish. I suppose they weren't really making him in such a hurry. And the fourth one is a standard example of the No. 5. So I'll have a bit of a closer look. This is probably a good one just to show the similarities and the differences with the receivers. You see the magazine on the Lee Metford is the skinnier 8 round single stacker, whereas the other 3 rifles have 10 round staggered column loading. The Lee Metford and the No. 1 Mark III both have the magazine cut off there, and you can see the progression where it's changed. The No. 1 Mark III has the charger bridge there, so you can load ammunition with a stripper, using a stripper clip or a charger clip, whatever you want to call it. The Lee Metford has a dust cover over the bolt. That was found to be unnecessary, so it was later done away with. The Lee Metford also has the groove there in the forestock, whereas the No. 1 doesn't. And then of course you see that the handguards on the top of the No. 1 Mark III go right to the end, to that snub nose, whereas on the Lee Metford they're only underneath. So that compares the two, and you can see the screws there for the volley sights, and they both have the barrel mounted rear sight, ladder rear sight. That? And then a fairly similar butt with a stock disc to record information, regimental information and so on. Then when you compare the No. 1 Mark III with the No. 4 Mark II, you can see that the No. 4 Mark II is very similar, has a squarer receiver, and it has the rear sight mounted above the receiver rather than further forward. The trigger on the No. 4 Mark II is hung from the receiver itself, whereas on the No. 1 Mark III and on earlier rifles it was part of the trigger guard and it was part of its own assembly, so there were issues there. Looking at the wood, comparing the No. 1 Mark III to the No. 4 Mark II, the nose caps are different. The bayonet on the No. 4 Mark II is mounted to the barrel, only to the barrel, whereas on the No. 1 Mark III it's mounted below. There's the lug at the front and the lug underneath. So we see the difference in walnut, and I suppose it's beech. I don't know, someone can tell me what the No. 4 Mark II is stocked in. Very blonde wood. Then to compare the No. 4 Mark II with the No. 5 Mark I, you see that the receivers are very similar. Both have the rear sight mounted above the receiver. Both have similar action, strengthening through the wood just in front of the wrist, as it were. But the number 4 has more metal on the receiver than the number 5. Number 5 is lightened, of course. And you see the big difference there as you look forward. Number 5 has a shortened barrel, flash hider, and a lot less timber. And it also has a lightened butt with a rubber butt plate to absorb the recoil. So here we do a first and last, 1889, 1953. The magazine Lee Metford compared to the Lee Enfield No1 MkIII. So you can see the difference in the length of there. And then we do the long and the short of it. The magazine rifle Mark I, later the Lee Metford, and the Lee Enfield No5 MkI. You see the different butts, of course, but you really see the difference as you travel forward. Have a look at that. Sorry, that's just my Doc Marten boot in the way there. Look at the length, the difference in the length. So there we have it, folks. The progression of the Lee type rifles as used by the British and the Commonwealth forces. Thanks very much. If you've got any ideas, leave a comment. See ya.